This is heartbreaking. Our suspect is only 14 years of age. This 14-year-old young boy's life is over too. He will never see the outside of a detention facility.
All right. Hey, I was all the way down. Have we exfilled from that house?
It was supposed to be an ordinary Sunday evening in Riverview, Florida. The kind of evening where neighbors sat on their porches sipping sweet tea, children's laughter echoed faintly down the street, and the hum of televisions filled cozy living rooms as families wound down from the week. On Summerfield Street, the warm glow of Tiffany Harris's kitchen lights spilled through her window, painting golden squares on the lawn. From the outside, nothing looked unusual. But inside that house, something was breaking apart. By 4:15 p.m., the tranquility of Riverview had vanished. Emergency calls flooded the 911 dispatch center. A man was seen staggering down the road, his shirt soaked with blood. His breaths came in desperate gasps as he tried to yell for help, his voice cracking and fading in the summer air. Just a few doors down, neighbors watched in horror as a young boy paced in the driveway, gripping a handgun. The boy's hands shook violently, his eyes wild with fear and something darker, something no one could name. Inside the house, screams were just too much, and when deputies arrived minutes later, the street had fallen silent. Only the cicadas buzzed in the distance. But the scene that awaited them was the kind of thing that drives into a person's mind and never leaves. A woman lay motionless on the living room floor, her body twisted unnaturally, a crimson pool spreading around her. In the driveway, the boy still held the gun. His face was pale, his chest rising and falling in shallow, panicked breaths. This wasn't a hardened criminal. This was a 14-year-old child. Before we continue, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. These are the stories they don't want you to hear, and together, we'll make sure no one ever forgets them. Earlier that day, Tiffany Harris had no reason to believe her life was about to end. At 39 years old, she was the heartbeat of her family. Friends described her as a woman whose smile could light up the gloomiest room, a mother whose entire world revolved around her 3 children. She had recently found a new source of joy. Her oldest daughter was pregnant. Tiffany was already dreaming of tiny baby clothes and late-night feedings, eager to step into the role of grandmother. But not everything in Tiffany's world was perfect. She shared her home with her boyfriend, Cortavius Cruz, a man who neighbors sometimes heard arguing with her late at night. No one thought much of it. After all, couples fight. But no one knew what those arguments were really like behind closed doors. Her youngest son, Adem Barry, stayed quiet through it all. At 14, he was in 8th grade, a boy with shy eyes and a soft voice. Teachers called him polite and reserved. He wasn't the type to get into fights. He wasn't the type anyone would expect to pick up a gun. But everyone has a breaking point. As Tiffany and Cortavius's argument escalated, Adem sat in his room, frozen. He could hear the shouting through the thin walls. Words he didn't understand, anger he didn't know how to process. His hands trembled as he opened his bedroom door. In the kitchen, his mother's purse sat on the counter. Inside was a handgun. Adem's fingers wrapped around the cold steel. He walked toward the sound of his mother's voice. Each step felt heavier than the last. And then, gunfire ripped through the house. By the time deputies arrived, Tiffany was already gone. Cortavius had somehow stumbled out of the house, bleeding from multiple wounds, and collapsed in the street. Adem was still outside, pacing with the gun clutched tightly. He raised it to his head once, then lowered it again. The officers could see the terror in his eyes. For 16 tense minutes, they pleaded with him to put it down. Their voices were calm but urgent. Finally, after a desperate struggle to reach him, the boy dropped the weapon. Deputies moved in quickly and took him into custody. Even the most seasoned officers on the scene would later say they had never witnessed anything like it. What could drive a 14-year-old boy to take his mother's life? Was it anger? Fear? A moment of madness? Or was this a tragedy years in the making? It was a quiet Sunday evening in Riverview, Florida. The sun was going down. Neighbors sat outside, talking and laughing. Some kids were playing in their yards. TVs hummed softly inside warm, cozy homes. But in one house, something was going very wrong. Tiffany Harris lived there. She was 39 years old and the mother of 3 children. Everyone who knew her said she was kind and full of love. Her smile could make anyone feel better, even on a bad day. Tiffany worked hard every single day. Life had not been easy for her, but she kept going because of her children. They were her whole world. She wanted them to be happy and safe. Recently, Tiffany was even more excited about life. Her oldest daughter was pregnant, and Tiffany couldn't stop talking about becoming a grandmother. She dreamed about holding the baby in her arms, about tiny clothes and soft blankets. She felt like her family's story was only getting better. But there were cracks in Tiffany's world that no one saw. In his bedroom, her youngest son Adem sat alone. He was 14 years old, quiet and shy. He liked to keep to himself. Teachers said he was respectful. Neighbors said he seemed like any normal boy his age. But no one knew what Adem felt inside. Tiffany had a boyfriend named Cortavius Cruz. He was 31 years old. To people outside, their relationship looked normal. But family members later said it was complicated. There were fights. Some were small. Some were loud enough for neighbors to hear. But no one thought much about it. Couples fight sometimes, don't they? No one guessed what would happen next. That night, in Tiffany's house, the shouting started again. Voices rose. The walls seemed to shake. In his room, Adem listened. His heart was beating fast. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He didn't know yet that the choice he was about to make would destroy everything. September 10th, 2023, started like any other day in the Harris home. Tiffany was in the living room with her boyfriend, Cortavius Cruz. At first, their voices were low, like 2 people trying to talk through a problem. But soon, the voices got louder. The shouting started. Adem sat in his room, frozen. He could hear every word, though the words didn't make sense to him. He didn't know why they always fought. He didn't know why his chest felt so tight or why his hands had started to shake. The shouting got worse. Something inside Adem felt like it was breaking apart. He stood up slowly. His feet felt heavy as he walked out of his room. In the kitchen, his mother's purse sat on the counter. Adem reached for it. Inside was her handgun. He had seen it before, but never touched it. This time, he wrapped his small hands around the cold metal. It felt heavy, too heavy for a boy his age. He didn't say a word as he walked toward the sound of their voices. In the living room, Tiffany and Cortavius didn't notice him at first. They were too busy screaming at each other, their faces red with anger. Then Adem raised the gun. His hands trembled, but his eyes didn't blink. The sound of the first gunshot shattered the air. Tiffany fell to the floor, her eyes wide with shock, her body crumpled like a doll. Blood spread quickly beneath her. Cortavius spun around, pain exploding in his chest as more bullets tore into him. He fell backward, clutching at his wounds. Somehow, he managed to get up, stumbling toward the door. Outside, the bright Florida sun blinded him as he staggered into the street, blood dripping from his clothes. His voice cracked as he screamed for help, dialing 911 with shaking hands. Inside the house, Adem stood still. The gun hung loosely in his grip. He stared at his mother's body on the floor. Her eyes didn't move. Her chest didn't rise. The weight of what he had done started to crash down on him. A 14-year-old boy, a mother he could never bring back, and no way to undo what had just happened. Deputies arrived within minutes, sirens wailing as they pulled up to the quiet street, now filled with fear and confusion. Adem stood in the driveway, clutching the gun tightly in both hands, his small chest rising and falling with quick, panicked breaths. His face was pale, his eyes wide and glassy like he was trapped in a nightmare he couldn't wake from. The officers stepped out slowly, hands raised to show they meant no harm, their voices calm but heavy with urgency. "Put it down, Adem," one deputy called out softly. "Buddy, please don't do this. Walk toward me. Keep your hands in the air." Adem didn't move at first. He kept pacing back and forth, the weapon trembling in his grip as tears streaked down his cheeks. His lips moved, whispering words too quiet for the deputies to hear. At one point, he raised the gun to his own head, his fingers twitching against the cold trigger. The officers froze, their hearts pounding as they begged him not to pull it. "You're okay, Adem," another deputy said gently, his voice breaking with emotion. "You made a good choice putting it down, bro. Just leave it on the ground. Please, don't pick it up again." For a moment, it seemed like Adem would listen. He lowered the gun slightly, his shoulders trembling as sobs racked his small body. But then, as if pulled by some invisible force, Adem's hand twitched, and he bent to reach for the gun again. The deputies acted in an instant. A loud pop echoed as a less lethal round fired from a launcher struck Adem in the torso, sending shockwaves of pain through his thin frame. He cried out, stumbling backward as the gun clattered to the ground. The officers rushed forward, tackling him gently but firmly to the pavement. They cuffed his small wrists and led him away as he cried, his voice breaking in a way that made even the toughest deputies swallow hard. Inside the house, Tiffany lay motionless on the floor, her blood soaking into the carpet. It was too late to save her. The news of Tiffany Harris's death spread across Riverview like wildfire, leaving neighbors and family members in shock. People gathered outside her home, whispering in disbelief, staring at the yellow police tape that now wrapped around the quiet house, where she had once laughed and cooked meals for her children. Nobody could understand how a peaceful Sunday evening had turned into something so dark. Sheriff Chad Chronister spoke to reporters with a heavy voice. "This is family violence at its absolute worst," he said, his face tight with emotion. He praised the deputies who had arrived at the scene, saying their calm and careful actions likely saved young Adem's life. They did everything right. Their de-escalation was textbook. They showed extreme restraint, even when it could have gone so much worse. But those words didn't soften the ache in the hearts of those who knew Tiffany. She was gone, and nothing could bring her back. Adem Barry, barely 14 years old, now faced charges no child should ever have to hear. Second-degree murder for the death of his mother. Attempted first-degree murder for shooting her boyfriend, Cortavius Cruz, who had survived but would carry scars for life. Neighbors stood outside in small groups, shaking their heads and clutching each other's hands. Family members wept as they tried to make sense of it all. How could a quiet, polite teenager, someone they had watched ride his bike down the street and walk home from school, turn a gun on his own mother? People whispered questions that no one could answer. Was this about hidden abuse in the home? Was Adem quietly battling mental health struggles no one had noticed? Or was it simply a moment of rage that exploded and changed everything forever? Tiffany's family could barely breathe under the weight of their grief. They had lost a daughter, a sister, a mother, a woman whose love had been the glue holding them all together. And now, the youngest of her children. The boy she raised, fed, and tucked into bed was facing the unthinkable. At just 14 years old, Adem was looking at spending the rest of his youth locked behind bars. In the days that followed, their home felt like a hollow shell. Tiffany's laughter would never echo through its rooms again. Her children would never feel the warmth of her hugs, and the baby she had been so excited to meet would grow up hearing stories about a grandmother she would never know. Sheriff Chad Chronister stood before cameras, his face heavy with sadness as he made a public plea. If you are living in fear, if you feel trapped in violence, please reach out for help before it's too late. Don't wait for tragedy to strike. One phone call can save your life and your family's future. But for the Harris family, that warning came too late. This wasn't just the end of Tiffany's life. It was the shattering of a family, a mother lost, a son's future destroyed, and a community left asking how such darkness could grow unnoticed in the walls of a quiet neighborhood home. One argument, one gun, and one split-second decision destroyed 3 lives. What warning signs did we miss? Could this have been prevented? And how many more families will be shattered before we learn?